Discover 3 terrifying true blackout stories that will haunt your nights with bone-chilling fear in the heart of Ohio, nestled amongst picket fences and well-manicured lawns. There lies a neighborhood like any other. But when the sun sinks below the horizon and an eerie silence blankets the streets, this suburban paradise transforms into a scene ripped straight from a horror film. One by one, the porch lights flicker and die, swallowed by the consuming darkness. An unnatural chill races through the air, sending shivers down spines as the shadowy corners of homes extend and twist. Sarah clutched her 2 small children tightly, their frightened eyes reflecting the dying beam of her flashlight. She had always believed in the strength of community and friendship among neighbors. But that night, as the tension mounted in the air, a creeping sense of isolation crept in. Tim, the stoic military veteran who lived 2 doors down, felt the familiar rush of adrenaline surging through his veins. He had faced real danger before, but this was different. He sensed a dark entity lurking just out of sight, something that thrived on fear and uncertainty. Outside, the Johnsons, the hopeful immigrant family, listened to the whispers of shadows swirling around them. Their dreams of a better life felt crushed by anxiety, each creak of the house making them question their position in this foreign land. Would they ever find a home here, or was it all an illusion bound to unravel in the dark? Just then, the oppressive silence was punctuated by a sudden crack of thunder. The power surged back for a fleeting moment only to vanish again. Heartbeats quickened. The shadows outside deepened, morphing into ghastly shapes that seemed intent on unsettling their peace. What was happening? Whispers of local legends began to crawl back into their minds, tales of a hidden curse tied to the land they inhabited, reminding them that this place may not be what it seemed. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Power flickered back, bathing their homes in a ghostly glow, but relief was short-lived. Instead, the air thickened with anxiety, an uncomfortable question hovering. Would they band together to confront the dark entity, or were they too wrapped up in their own fears to act? Conversations shifted from tales of strength to bitter arguments about survival. It was in that moment, amidst the panic and uncertainty, that they realized the true threat was more than just the darkness outside. As shadows danced just beyond their flashlights, the air crackled with tension. A night of reckoning loomed. Their homes transformed into battlegrounds against an entity that meant to consume their dreams and divide their spirits. When the final blackout hit, nothing remained familiar. It had been more than a power outage. It was a dark revelation that whispered promises of despair and distrust. And as they faced the uncertain future, one haunting question lingered. How far would they go to protect their families and each other from darkness, both outside their doors and within their hearts? The flickering lights were just the beginning. The darkness swirled thicker than ever. Inside Sarah's home, her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the muffled sounds of fear echoing through the street. The flashlight flickered as she strained to keep its beam steady, illuminating the wide eyes of her children, their innocence swallowed by uncertainty. "Mommy, I'm scared," whispered Lily, her small voice trembling. "I know, honey. We'll be okay," Sarah replied, but doubt gnawed at her words. She could feel the weight of something unseen pressing against their home, flattening even the warmest memories into cold shadows. Meanwhile, Tim stood frozen on his porch, scanning the empty street. His instincts screamed danger, but he had nowhere to direct his attention. Every shadow looked like a lurking creature, every whisper, a call for help or maybe for harm. He clenched his fists, roughly pressing his nails into his palm. "This isn't just a blackout," he muttered, aware that whatever darkness had descended was more than an absence of light. Across the way, the Johnsons huddled together, listening to the rising tension. "Do you think we should leave?" Mr. Johnson asked, his voice just above a whisper, each word coated with terror. He glanced toward his children, who clutched at their mother's jeans like life rafts. And go where? She shot back, panic evident as their house felt more like a cage than a refuge. Then, just as the despair started to close in, a loud crash broke the heavy quiet like glass shattering against concrete. Everyone jumped, hearts racing. Was that the Miller's house? Sarah asked, her chest tightening. Tim's eyes darted in that direction, instincts kicking in. I'll check it out, he said, voice firm even as a shiver crawled down his spine. I'm coming with you. Sarah grabbed a second flashlight, determination reflecting in her gaze as she stepped outside, lifting her chin against the chill. The Johnsons hesitated, exchanging worried glances, but the fear of eviction by the lurking entity threatened to chain them to their fears. One by one, they followed suit, the need for safety outweighing the confusion and indecision. Together they hesitated on the porch, a small band of souls facing down a larger darkness as they approached the Miller's home. A strange glow pulsed from within, not the warm light of life, but a flickering, ghostly luminescence. The shadows around them crept closer, brushing against their skin, whispering promises of despair. What is happening? Lily's voice quaked, breaking the thick silence as it pooled with tension. Tim swallowed hard, stepping forward. Stay close, he instructed, but uncertainty tugged at his resolve. With each step, an uneasy pressure mounted. Something was wrong. His breath held and the air thick with fear. He knocked hard at the Miller's door. Hello? Anyone home? Silence answered him, more oppressive than the darkness that wrapped around them. Another crash erupted from inside, shaking the door and rattling the frame. Sarah gasped and clutched her children tighter. Maybe we should go, she urged, glancing back toward their own homes, now mere silhouettes against the bounding shadows. Yet, something drew them in a chilling curiosity mixed with undeniable dread. Suddenly, the door creaked open, revealing only darkness beyond. Is anyone there? Tim called, peering inside, but it felt as if the very essence of despair was waiting on the other side. The breath he didn't know he was holding escaped him as he felt a cold breeze ripple through his clothes, deeper than the Oklahoma night. In that heartbeat, doubt turned to terror, and the fear clawing at their throats transformed into a primal scream for survival. What awaited them inside? And what horrific secrets had taken root in their seemingly perfect neighborhood? As they teetered between the known and the unknown, the lights flickered once more and then total darkness threatened to drown them whole. What would they find inside? And would they all make it back? Tim braced himself, the door hanging ajar like a gaping mouth ready to swallow them whole. The flickering glow from within cast eerie shadows on their faces, distorting their expressions of fear and determination. Should we really go in? Sarah whispered, her voice vibrating with anxiety. Just as her words slipped into the abyss, the pulsing light dimmed, leaving them teetering on the edge of utter darkness. Maybe they just need help, Tim replied, his voice wavering despite his attempt to sound brave. The idea rooted deep in his mind, battling against the rising tide of fear. Determined yet terrified, he pushed the door open further, revealing a hallway shrouded in heavy silence. Stay close, he warned again, glancing back at Sarah and the kids. Sarah squeezed Lily's hand tightly, her heart thumping in tandem with the child's frantic pulses of fear. As they stepped inside, cold air prickled their skin like knives. It was wrong. The smell of damp would mixed with something sharp, something unacceptable that sent alarm bells ringing in Tim's head. Shadows danced around them, twisting and turning with malicious intent. Every creak of the floor seemed amplified as if the house itself was alive, conspiring against them. What was that? Whispered Jacob, Sarah's older son, his voice barely above a breath. The small band of neighbors moved deeper into the home, the beam of their flashlights flickering as if sensing something sinister. The light finally fell on the living room and they stopped dead. The furniture was in disarray, cushions ripped apart, a coffee table turned on its side. But it was the walls that captured their attention, pockmarked with dark ichor that glimmered under the flashlight beam like old, dried blood. Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. We can't stay here. No, he insisted, trying desperately to inject reason into their devolving situation. We just need to look around. Maybe someone else hurt. But another crash echoed from the back of the house, louder this time. A sharp sound like bones breaking against glass. Every nerve in Tim's body erupted in instinctive fight or flight. He took a deep breath, pushing down the rising panic. "We need to check that out," he said, gripping Sarah's hand tighter. In that moment, the flickering light cut out completely, plunging them into a suffocating darkness. Panic wrapped around them, thick and weighted. Even their shared breaths felt heavy, as the grip of fear hugged ever tighter. Tim spun around, searching for a source of comfort in those familiar faces frantically illuminated by the tremors of their flashlights. "Stay together," he urged, his voice sharp and authoritative against the oppressive silence that followed. A shrill scream erupted from somewhere deeper in the house, echoing against the walls, shredding their fragile composure. It was a sound born of terror, desolation, something twisted that made their stomachs drop. "Did you hear that? What was that?" cried Lily, her eyes wide with despair. "Let us get out of here," Sarah urged, moving to turn back. But before they could take even a step, a cold hiss echoed around them, sending chills down their spines. The temperature seemed to plummet, wrapping them in an icy grip. Then, just as suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes flickered to life in the darkness ahead, the embodiment of their fears, reflecting back what they dreaded most. Tim's heart plummeted as dread coiled around him, a feeling like drowning at the surface of the water. "What the hell is that?" Jacob gasped, voice trembling as each breath became shallow. The eyes blazed brighter, the darkness curling inward, as if something, a malevolent force, was drawing nearer, eager to claim them. With a shared glance of terror, they turned to flee, scrambling backward toward the door, desperation clawing at their heels. Tim lunged for the handle, but it slammed shut, or was it the dark entity closing in, trapping them in an inescapable fate? Just as they reached the brink of despair, Tim's flashlight flared back to life, illuminating a figure looming behind them. It was a chilling silhouette against the dimly lit interior, bearing down with an overwhelming malice. "What do you want?" Tim shouted, his voice wavering. The darkness seemed to ripple, as though mocking their attempts at bravery. And in that moment, as panic escalated, another crash echoed from outside, shivering through the walls. Was it just the wind? Or was their neighborhood crumbling under the weight of darkness too? What would they confront now, facing the unknown that awaited them? Would they succumb? Or could they still escape the infernal grip of terror? Time was running out. Just when everything felt lost, what if something even worse emerged from the shadows? The figure in the darkness shifted, its features obscured but its intent unmistakably ominous. Tim's heart raced, pounding in his chest like a war drum, each beat echoing his frantic thoughts. He could barely take a breath as he attempted to process the horror that was unfolding before them. "Get back," he shouted, raising the flashlight like a weapon. The beam flickered erratically, its weak light barely piercing the obsidian void that surrounded them. "Tim, what is that?" Sarah's voice trembled, and Tim could hear the quiver in her words. The others were just as terrified, frozen in place, eyes wide with dread. Then, without warning, the figure lunged forward, a blur of darkness merging with a chilling howl that sent goosebumps racing over Tim's arms. In a flash, it had closed the distance, and Tim's instincts kicked in. He yanked at Sarah's arm, propelling them backward, but the oppressive atmosphere held them in its grip, as if the very air conspired to keep them there. Suddenly, the front door burst open, scattering a cacophony of wind and lost leaves into the dim space. A gust of frigid air rushed in, sending shivers down their spines as if the house were exhaling its breath, a reluctant admission of the horrors within. When Tim turned to look at the door, a flicker of hope flared in his chest. But then everything shifted again. The figure merged into the shadows, and a monstrous growl reverberated through the house, a low, predatory sound that made the hairs on the back of Tim's neck stand on end in a frenzy of survival. He turned back to the group. "We need to run," he urged, but terror had gripped them, twisting their limbs in hesitation. He could see it in Jacob's eyes, the conflict between fear and instinct. Then the lights flickered on an explosion of brilliant white that flooded the space. The figure was gone. For a moment, all that remained was the chaos of their panicked breaths and thudding hearts. What just happened? Lily's voice was barely a whisper, her small body pressed against Sarah. I don't know, Tim stammered, scanning the room. The darkness had receded, but the dread lingered in the corners. Did something more sinister lurk just beyond the glow of their flashlights? Before they could catch their breath, another crash echoed from deeper within the house, louder, more violent this time. The sound seemed to shake the very foundation beneath them, and it carried with it an unmistakable weight of impending doom. Maybe we should go, Jacob suggested, finally breaking the tension, but they all sensed that leaving would mean abandoning someone who could still be in danger. But if they stayed, what else would they face? Tim felt his resolve hardening. We can't leave without knowing if anyone is here. His voice was a brittle clash of bravery and desperation. Didn't you hear that? Jacob shot back, his eyes wild. That thing could be anywhere. What if it comes back? What choice did they have? Stay and confront whatever that was, or flee into the night clutching the uncertainty, the guilt, and perhaps even the horror they had encountered. For a moment, the room fell silent, each person attempting to gauge the other's resolve. Then, in the stillness, Sarah squeezed Tim's hand tighter. Let us go. Together, she said, her eyes steady, igniting a flicker of courage in the rest. Tim took a deep breath, straightening his back. Together they could face it. They had to believe that. He turned back toward the shadowy hallway, ready to confront the darkness that awaited them. But just as he did, the lights flickered again, more intensely this time that a whisper slithered through the air, better felt than heard, chilling them to the bone. Leave now. With adrenaline surging in their veins, Tim led them forward, hearts racing, pulse quickening. Every step echoed like a countdown, urging them closer to the truth or to their doom. But deep inside, as dread enveloped them, a more urgent question burned in Tim's mind. What was waiting in the shadows, and would they survive the encounter? The hallway loomed ahead, a deep seam of black cut through by the trembling glow of their flashlights. Tim's breath quickened, his anxiety wrapping around him like a tightening noose. Stay close, he whispered, but it felt more like a prayer than an order. Sarah fell in next to him, and he could feel her small hands struggling to keep pace with his determined strides. The sounds of their breathing echoed in the dim hallway, an eerie reminder that, despite the flickering lights, danger was still proximity. Jacob and Lily moved behind them, the three of them huddling together, a fragile shield against the darkness. Suddenly, another loud crash resonated from the heart of the house, rattling the floorboards and stealing the air from Tim's lungs. The sound blasted through the confined space, like a sinister heartbeat thrumming in sync with their fear. What was that? Lily squeaked, her voice barely rising above a whisper, shaking with terror. Let us just move, please, Tim urged, trying to muster strength he didn't feel. They pressed forward, inching toward the source of the chaos, each hesitating yet yearning for answers the unknowns gnawed at them. The flashlight beams danced across peeling wallpaper and dust-laden furniture, revealing fragments of a once-lived life. A shattered picture frame lay abandoned on the floor. Was that a family they once knew? Faces turned to shadows, secrets buried behind their eyes. With each step deeper into the house, the air grew heavier, suffocating with an oppressive weight. The atmosphere buzzed with an electric hum, and Tim's heart raced faster. It feels wrong, Jacob muttered, glancing nervously over his shoulder, as if the resurrected figure could spring back to life at any moment. Just focus, Tim said, but doubt loomed large. Were they hunting answers, or had they inadvertently become prey? The final door at the end of the hallway swung open slowly, creaking like a ghostly whisper. They stood before what seemed to be a once grand living room, now a graveyard of memories. Dust motes floated in the still air, and shadows danced menacingly against the walls. There, in the center of the room, an old rocking chair swayed slightly as if stirred by an invisible force. It creaked softly with each motion, a morbid lullaby in the unsettling ambience. Tim moved closer, drawn by a voice in his head, urging him onward. Sarah's voice trembled behind him. Should we really? This is it, he interrupted, his own tension seeping out. Something happened here. A snarl echoed faintly, like thunder rumbling from deep within the recesses of the house, vibrating through the floor and resonating in their bones. Then, as if responding to their arrival, the lights flickered wildly, sending the room spinning into chaos. Tim gripped the flashlight harder, illuminating a glimpse of something monstrous, a shape darting across the room. It was quick, barely visible, like a nightmare materializing before their eyes. Get back. He shoved Sarah, Jacob, and Lily, shielding them from whatever lurked behind him. The room plunged into darkness again, plunging their hearts further into terror. A guttural growl echoed through the blackness, primal and fierce, slicing through their nerves. We need to go, Jacob yelled, and fear ignited like wildfire in his voice. But just as they began to retreat, a chilling voice pierced the silence, soft yet commanding. You shouldn't have come here. Tim's heart dropped. What was speaking? The words wrapped around their minds, leaving a frozen weight of dread. In that moment of paralyzing fear, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The wall splintered, as though the house itself was protesting their intrusion. Something was awakening, something ancient and angry. They had crossed a threshold, but could they turn back? Would they escape the nightmares rising to meet them? Stay together, Tim shouted, but the sound of his own voice felt hollow. And just as they prepared to flee, the lights kicked back on, revealing a horrific image in the corner of the room. The figure from before cloaked in shadow, eyes glowing with a feral hunger. The last thought in Tim's mind before chaos unleashed was a single, burning question. Had they stepped into a trap, or were they simply part of a much larger game? The air crackled with tension as the figure loomed larger in the flickering light. Its eyes glowed, fierce and hungry, a predator finally facing its prey. Tim's breath caught in his throat, the weight of dread pressing heavily upon him. He took an instinctive step back, feeling the gentle squeeze of Sarah's hand in his. What is that? Lily stammered, her voice trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. The figure shifted, the shadows around it swirling as if alive, feeding off their fear. Run! Tim yelled, the urgency snapping him into movement. He tugged Sarah along, his heart racing against the primal instinct to stand and confront this horror. But the darkness didn't wait for them. No sooner had they taken a step than the lights flickered out again, plunging them into an abyss darker than before. They stumbled, their flashlights flickering wildly, revealing nothing but endless night. Panic gripped each of them, a visceral chain reaction. Tim's mind raced. The exit was behind them. They had to go back, but the unseen beast seemed to close in around them, its breath whispering against their skin like the chill of a grave. Keep moving, Jacob shouted, the panic in his voice an ominous siren. We have to find a way out. Every instinct told Tim to fight, to stand tall against the creeping dread. But with each passing moment, he felt weaker. The back of his mind screamed that they were trapped, that they had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Without thinking, they bolted toward the direction they came from, but the hallway felt infinitely longer now, stretching like an abyss. Footsteps echoed around them. No, not their own. Other footsteps, heavy and looming, chasing them down the corridor. Panic clawed at Tim's chest. They could hear the beast behind them, closing the distance with dreadful speed. Tim, Sarah cried, the strain in her voice pure terror. I can't. Just a little more. He pushed back, focusing on the glimmer of light ahead. The door, the one they entered through it, must still swing open to freedom. They stumbled as they dashed, weaving through the darkness with sheer desperation. Tim risked a glance backward. The creature was closer now, its face slowly becoming more defined in the erratic light. Gaunt, a twisted mockery of humanity, itself a nightmare from the depths. Just then, Jacob tripped, his cry splintering the air. Tim lunged to grab him, feeling the brush of cold, clammy fingers breathing dangerously close behind. He couldn't look back. Every fiber of his being told him to keep running, to not give in to the darkness. Go. "Don't look back," Tim shouted, as he struggled to pull Jacob up. But the shadows twisted around his friend, dragging him down, merging him with the blackness. "No!" Sarah screamed, her horror punctuating the air like a knife. Tim's heart shattered as he felt the tether of their group fray. He couldn't lose anyone else to that thing. It needed to be stopped. Without thinking, he pivoted, mustering every ounce of bravery he could scrape up. "Sarah, stay with me," he yelled, shoving her toward the door. The flicker of his flashlight revealed Jacob disappearing into the void, swallowed by the darkness. Then the ground shook violently, the walls rumbling like thunder. Tim's heart rose in his throat. They had awakened something in this house, something that was always meant to stay buried. "Tim," Sarah's voice cracked, drawing him back to her. The fear in her eyes cut deep like blades stabbing at him. "What do we do?" Panic clawed at him, but through the chaos a single thought crystallized in his mind. They had to confront whatever it was, or else they wouldn't make it out alive. The figure emerged again. The malicious glow of its eyes locked onto them. This wasn't just a trap, it felt like a ritual, feeding off the fear, waiting for the right moment to make its claim. And then, as if sensing his newfound resolve, a sinister smile curled across the creature's lips. "They're mine," it hissed, the voice slithering into their very souls. Tim felt Sarah's grip tighten in horror. "What do we do?" she whispered, a tremor in her voice. But before he could respond, the lights flickered back to life one final time, revealing the room in its ghastly entirety, filled not just with shadows, but other figures, all watching, all waiting. As the realization dawned, the last thought spiraled through Tim's mind. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were part of something much bigger, a horrifying game that had just begun. "Let us go," he shouted again, and with renewed determination, they turned to face the doorway. But as they rushed forward, a bone-chilling voice echoed in the air, mocking them. "The game has only just begun outside." The night loomed shifting, and the house behind them seemed to shudder with dark laughter. The door swung open, spilling them into the night, but the chill of the air felt more like a predator waiting on the edge of sanity. Tim's heart continued to hammer in his chest, a wild drum echoing his fear, as he stumbled to the ground. Sarah fell beside him, panting, her wide eyes darting back toward the house. "We need to get away from here," Jacob yelled, his voice frantic as he reached for them, his breath coming in ragged gasps. But where was Jacob? Tim's heart sank even deeper at the realization. "Where's Jacob?" Tim shouted, panic rising in his throat like bile. "I don't know. He didn't make it." Sarah's voice quivered. The truth hit Tim like a blow to the stomach. Jacob was gone. The creature had taken him, swallowed him into the depths of that accursed house. The shadows they escaped weren't just fabrications. They were alive, and he had no doubt that they still lingered in the air, coiling and waiting. "Run!" He grasped Sarah's hand, pulling her into the dense air filled with the stench of earth and decay. They raced away from the house, the echoes of their footsteps blending with the rustling leaves. But something compelled Tim to look back just once more. In the dim light of the full moon, the house stood still, like a gaping mouth shadowed with hunger. It was as if it breathed, swallowing the night around it. And then, for a brief moment, he saw it, a fleeting shadow in the window. The figure looking out, eyes glowing with that same malignant hunger. "Tim!" Sarah's scream broke through his daze, snapping him back to reality. They were still running, their feet pounding across the dirt like drums of war. "Go faster," he urged, but his own legs felt like lead. What would happen if they stopped? What if the shadows started chasing them again? Branches clawed at their skin, and the underbrush snagged their clothes. Each sound echoed like a countdown, a warning, as if something delayed simply to savor the moments of dread. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled, losing grip and falling to the ground. "I can't," she gasped, pressing her hands into the dirt. "I can't go any further." Tim turned, resisting the urge to panic. "We have to." He knelt beside her, looking deep into her eyes. "What if it comes back?" With a tremor, she shook her head. "I can't move." The fear, It's holding me down. Tim's heart raced. He couldn't let the fear win. Not now. With a surge of adrenaline, he reached down, grabbing her shoulders. Listen to me, you are stronger than this. We cannot let it control us. Sarah nodded, determination igniting behind her fear. Together, they pulled each other up. The weight of loss hung heavily around them. But they couldn't look back now as they continued to push through the underbrush. The tree line began to thin. A clearing opened up before them, moonlit and wide. It felt almost like a respite, but something held still in the air. Tim could feel it, the tension, the silence pregnant with dread. Then, as if summoned by their flight, the growl returned, a low, rumbling sound that shook the ground beneath their feet. Run! He yelled, pulling her toward the open space. But as they reached the center, a sudden realization froze him in place. Only a few yards ahead stood a series of ancient stone pillars, ruins rising maliciously like sentinels of despair. Their surfaces glistened with moisture, and the air was thick with an almost electric quality that crackled around them. What is this place? Sarah breathed, staring at the pillars. Tim's stomach nodded. He recognized them from the folklore. Places rumored to harbor dark rituals. Places where spirits were bound and deals were struck. He turned to her, panic creeping back in. We shouldn't be here. It feels wrong. Before they could decide their next move, a shadow emerged from behind one of the pillars, a shape sweeping forward, cloaked in shadow. It took form, revealing not just one figure, but several, each with those glowing eyes suffused with endless hunger. Welcome, the voice echoed, distorted but familiar. It was compounded, layered, a chorus of the damned. To the game before the game. Chilled to the bone, Tim pulled Sarah closer. They were caught in something much larger than themselves. The game wasn't just survival. It was about choices, and those choices would determine their very souls. As the haunting figures stepped closer, a sense of impending doom washed over them. Are you ready to play? The voices taunted, each word laced with malice. And just like that, everything fell silent but for the sound of their racing hearts, echoing in the void. What awaited them was unknowable, but in that moment, Tim realized they were no longer just trying to escape. Their fate was sealed in a game that had just begun, and the rules had yet to be revealed. Would they rise above the darkness or be consumed by it? The figures floated closer, their movements unnaturally smooth, like liquid shadows spilling from the pillars. Tim could barely catch his breath as fear gnawed at him from the inside. Each step they took sent icy fingers down his spine. Tim, Sarah's voice was nearly a whisper, trembling as she clutched his arm. He could feel her heart racing against his shoulder, a frantic echo to his own. What are they? He wanted to lie, to tell her they were just figments of their imagination, but the truth burned like acid in his throat. I think they're trapped souls, he managed to say, his throat dry and tight. Maybe they were like us once. As if confirming his fears, one of the shadows stepped forward, its face emerging from darkness. The features were warped, twisted into a grotesque grin that sent shivers racing across Tim's skin. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth sharp and glinting like knives. But instead of a voice, a cacophony of whispers poured forth, clawing at Tim's sanity. Join us? Play the game. Free yourself. What do they want? Sarah gasped, pulling Tim closer, her breath hitching with each echoing phrase. Freedom. Power. Something from us, he stuttered, eyes darting around the clearing. The pillars loomed like watchers, their silent presence feeling like a judgment day. Tim realized that they could become part of this twisted dance or be consumed by it, but he had no intention of becoming the next trophy. We can't listen to them, Tim urged, realizing the urgency of their situation. We have to break the spell. But as they turned to flee, the ground beneath them seemed to shift, pulsating like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. The shadows lunged forward, barriers of malevolence sliding around them, blocking their escape. Choose, the chorus howled. Your past or your fear. What does that even mean? Sarah cried. What choice do we have? Listen, Tim urged. They want us to confront our fears. to bury them or leave them to fester. He knew what they needed to do. The memories of their recent escape blended with older ghosts, the friends lost in school, the roots of Jacob's disappearance gnawing his stomach. Every unresolved conflict clawed at him. "I can't," Sarah's voice broke, suffocated with dread. "I can't confront it." "Yes, you can. This is our only chance." Tim felt the urgency swell within him, willing her to understand. "We can't turn back. We have to face whatever darkness is waiting for us." The shadows swirled, laughing softly, their echoing voices merging into one. "Your decisions matter." Such sweet fear. Without thinking, Tim closed his eyes and focused. Memories flooded his mind, his childhood. Every failure, every mistake, even the pain of losing Jacob intertwined with the determination to escape. "I choose to face it," he shouted into the darkness, his voice resonating like a battle cry. But as he shouted, he felt an invisible grip tighten around his throat, pushing against every sense. The world shifted violently, and Sarah's terrified scream pierced through the suffocating silence. Tim opened his eyes, finding himself alone in a void. The pillars were gone, replaced with an endless expanse. Sarah was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through him as the voices resumed. "The game has truly begun, Sarah," he yelled, but no answer came. Only the persistent echoes of the shadows, their laughter blending with the wind. He was torn between fury and fear. Had she too made her choice? Or had she vanished into the curse of that cursed home? Then he saw the outline of a doorway emerging from the black, a soft glow beckoning him closer. But was it salvation or another trap? He was faced with a choice, to chase after the light or remain rooted in his fears. What awaited him on the other side? As he stepped toward the glow, a chilling revelation struck Tim. The abyss of his own regrets would demand a price. Would he be willing to pay it? And what if the shadows had already claimed Sarah as their own? The soft whispers tightened their grip in the darkness, a haunting reminder that time was running out. Tim's heart raced as he stepped closer to the glow. It flickered and pulsed, casting eerie shadows around him. Doubt washed over him. What if this was an illusion, another trap designed to ensnare him? Yet the thought of leaving Sarah behind was unbearable. "Sarah," he called again, his voice echoing back distorted, as if mocking him. With a deep breath, he stepped through the doorway. The moment he crossed the threshold, the light engulfed him, a searing brilliance that stung his eyes. He shielded his face with his arm, feeling like he had stepped into a new reality. The brightness dimmed, and as his vision adjusted, he blinked twice, taking in his surroundings. He stood in a large, empty space, an endless hall lined with mirrors reflecting not only his image but phantoms of his past. Each mirror showed scenes from his life, moments he had buried deep within himself. There was his childhood home, the sweet memories intertwined with the bitter taste of loss. Friends laughing around a birthday cake. But then it morphed into Jacob's smiling face, followed by the grim reality of his disappearance. "This is impossible," Tim stammered, feeling a cold sweat trickle down his back. In the mirrors, shadows danced, twisting his reflections into nightmarish versions. His older self glared back at him, face twisted in anguish, as if holding him accountable for every regret. "Face your truth, Tim," a voice echoed through the hall, deep and resonant, vibrating through the very core of his being. "You can run, but it will always be waiting for you." "Who are you?" Tim shouted, his voice trembling. "Just a guide," the voice replied, reverberating all around. "You have to understand the choices you've made or be doomed to repeat them." The very air in the hall thickened, tension heightening as each reflection began to stir and converge toward Tim, as if yearning to escape the glass confines. Panic bubbled in his throat. He could feel the shadows lurking just outside his reach, always clawing, desperate to grasp him. He clenched his fists, grounding himself. "I won't let you take me. Not now." The mirrors began to fracture, dark webs sprawling across their surfaces. Yet each crack revealed even darker memories, moments he had tried to erase. Tim was caught in a relentless whirlwind of choices, truth and lies, love and loss, bravery and cowardice all colliding and threatening to swallow him whole. "Sarah?" he whispered, choking on the fragmented memories that clawed at his heart. She was still out there, he had to believe it. In here, every choice echoes. The voice surged again, now pitiless. "You think you can save her while trapped in your own fears? No, I won't accept that," Tim shouted, fighting the suffocating grip of despair. With every ounce of strength, he reached for the glass barrier, summoning his will to shatter the reflections. As his fist made contact with the mirror, a shockwave rippled through the hall, the echoes of the past reverberating back at him with unrelenting fury, and for a moment, silence filled the air, followed by a haunting whisper. "Choose wisely, Tim. The game continues. Sacrifice must be made suddenly." The mirrors melted away, revealing a dark corridor. At its end, flickering lights beckoned him forward. What awaited him there? Could he finally find Sarah? Or had the shadows claimed her? Tim hesitated. Heart pounding, was this the answer he sought or another cruel trick? Before he could decide, he lunged down the corridor, fear propelling him. But that foreboding voice echoed again, lingering like a chill. "The past will always find you, and it's hungry for payment." What cost would he have to pay to save her from the shadows? The corridor stretched endlessly, the flickering lights growing brighter yet more ominous with each step Tim took. The ticking sound of a clock filled the air, a relentless reminder of time slipping away. "I'll find you, Sarah," he whispered resolutely, pushing aside the encroaching dread that wrapped around him like chains as he neared the end. The flickering lights flared up, spilling warmth across the dark space. In the harsh glow, he saw a door ancient and heavy, etched with symbols that pulsed with an eerie energy. Tim paused, heart racing. This had to be it. Breathing deeply, he reached for the handle, knowing that whatever lay beyond could either deliver salvation or deeper despair. He pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest as a gust of cold wind swept over him. Inside, the room was vast, filled with swirling mist and shadowy figures drifting aimlessly. And at the center stood Sarah, illuminated by a soft light, trembling as she faced the chaos surrounding her. Tim's breath caught. It was real. She was here. "Sarah," he called out, his voice echoing painfully against the darkness, fighting to reach her. Her head turned, eyes wide and filled with both relief and terror. "Tim, you found me," she breathed, but as the words slipped from her lips, shadows erupted, coiling around Sarah like aggressive vines, threatening to pull her back into the abyss. "No," Tim shouted, rushing forward, dread clawing at his insides. "Tim, help!" She strained against the shadows, but they tightened their grip, pulling her closer to a swirling vortex of despair. Tim's heart raced, every instinct urging him to fight. But how? What did they want from him? "Face your fears." The deep voice thundered around him, shaking the room. He could feel it deep-rooted, paralyzing memories clawing at his mind. "You must choose to save her, but what's the cost?" In that moment, everything fell into focus. He realized now what he had to do. Those shadows were manifestations of his own doubts, regrets, and guilt, not just about Jacob, but about their lives, decisions made while seeking safety for their family. Tim steadied his breath, forcing himself to confront what had shaped him. The fear he had harbored over the fears of losing everything he cherished. "I choose to face you," Tim shouted, a newfound strength surging through him. He stepped forward, open palms facing the shadows, willing to embrace the pain that came with them. The shadows recoiled, oscillating in uncertainty as if his words struck a chord. "I won't run anymore." In response, the room trembled violently. The shadows writhed as though caught in a storm, struggling against an unseen force. "You have power, Tim," the voice echoed low and resonant, tranquil yet commanding. "But what will you sacrifice to claim it?" "I will sacrifice my doubts, my pain, my fears," he declared, summoning the strength of memories, the laughter of his children, the warmth of Sarah's embrace, the dream of a safe home. The shadows reared back as realization dawned. He didn't need to carry their weight anymore. Tim felt a shift, The light brightened, illuminating the room in a fierce glow as Tim pushed onward. Sarah's form flickered like candlelight. "Tim, I'm scared," she cried, but he smiled firmly, stealing the breath of despair from her lungs. "I'm here." In the chaos, he reached for the shadows, and in a moment of reckless courage, he plunged into their depths. The darkness scraped and clawed, but instead of pulling him down, it began to dissolve with each acceptance of his past. Memories flickered vividly, moments of joy intertwined with the pain of loss, and he embraced them. "I am defined by my choices, but I won't be enslaved by my past." With one final roar, the power of his resolve shattered the darkness. The shadows dispersed into wild forms, evaporating into thin air, their cries echoing an ultimate release. The vortex around Sarah loosened, its grasp broken by Tim's unwavering spirit. The glow enveloped them both, and suddenly, in the radiant aftermath of reckoning, Sarah was free. "Tim," she cried, rushing into his arms. As the light intensified, enveloping them both in a warmth that felt like home. "You did it." Tears streamed down her face, relief washing over her. But as they held on to each other, darkness lurked at the edges of their vision, the house behind them trembling as if wounded. Tim glanced back, dread creeping into his heart. The feeling of victory was bittersweet. Had they truly escaped or merely delayed the inevitable? "Let us go," Tim urged, pulling Sarah away as they bolted back through the doorway. They rushed down the corridor, hearts pounding, the air echoing with fleeting whispers. The ticking clock was louder now, an ominous reminder of time running short. Finally, they broke into the open night, breathless and alive, but the shadows still lingered in the dark corners, whispering promises of return. They had escaped the house, but the game had only begun as they reached the threshold of safety under the moon's watchful eye. Tim interlaced his fingers with Sarah's. "We'll face the darkness together," he vowed, looking deep into her eyes. "Always." But the shadows writhed in the distance, and a chilling laughter echoed behind them, promising one thing: the game would continue. "Remember, Tim," the voice from the abyss murmured, "you can run, but the game always leaves a mark." They stepped away from the horrors of that night, uncertain of what lay ahead. All they knew was that, together, they would face whatever darkness returned. They had emerged intact for now. But the shadows would be waiting. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and let everyone know you're here for these thrilling adventures. We want to hear from you, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild journey. And whatever you do, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel. Let us keep the stories alive together.